Hello and welcome to the DSP Leaders Summit on 5G Evolution. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV, and coming up now is our Solutions and Strategies Roundtable, where we'll be discussing the impact of OpenRAN on 5G RAN evolution. So how will network operators adjust to a hybrid radio access network once OpenRAN technologies are deployed in their networks? There will undoubtedly be challenges to mitigate, and a one-size-fits-all model is probably unlikely. But let's find out what our guests think. And I'm delighted to introduce Terje Jensen, who is SVP and Head of Global Network Architecture, Director of 5G Readiness Strategic Program Technologies and Services at Telenor. Tom Bennett, Director Technology Services, Solutions, Architecture, Devices and Labs for EE and BT. Volker, who is Director Mobility Solutions at CommScope, and Francis Haysom, who is Principal Analyst with Appledore Research. Well, hello everyone, very good to see you all, and thank you so much for taking part in this roundtable. Now, we asked our viewers what they regarded as the main issues around OpenRAN and 5G, and from the feedback we received, we've created a series of key questions. So let's start with the first one, and that is, what is the biggest challenge for operators looking to add OpenRAN deployments into their existing networks? So let's ask one of our operators first. Terje, perhaps I could ask that one of you.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and of course it's not only one challenge in what we are facing, and it probably come with two facets. One is that the OpenRAN, as such as we consider it, it's not fully mature yet. So there are still some specifications and still some work ahead of us, even though there are, of course, commercial and pilots launched for certain applications. So what we see there is still a challenge on maturing and also making sure that this is interoperability, not only in the first release, but also in the future releases. Then I think a second part of the question is actually 5G in addition to the 2G, 3G, and 4G. Of course, what we see is a great benefit if we could have a common solution across all these generations, which is actually providing additional benefits when there are common infrastructure and common solutions, which of course also helps for supporting the customer needs in that sense. So it's a kind of multifaceted challenge that, as I see it, both on the maturity and also this efficiency side on across the technologies.
Thank you, Terje. And Tom, if I could ask you the same question, because not all operators are looking at OpenRAN in the same way. They're not at the same stage of their thought process with OpenRAN. But generally speaking, what do you think are the biggest challenges for those operators looking to actually deploy OpenRAN?
So I agree with the comments made. Yes, OpenRAN is exactly the kind of thing we need to be looking at as an operator community. We want to bring on board these kind of new technologies and kind of reinforce our ecosystem. But I've really got to come down to from key challenges. I mean, there are a multitude, as mentioned, in particular customer experience for me. The number one challenge we all have as operators is to ensure a continuity of an excellent customer experience. That's what our customers are paying us for. And are the products ready and available that can meet those demands, be those demands extra rural, low latency, or really high capacity in the urban areas? And also, as just mentioned, at the end of the day, we've got 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G out there. Are the products and is the ecosystem ready to support all of that?
Great, thanks, Tom. And Francis, you've been keeping a very close eye on this subject for some time now. What's your observations? What do you see as the biggest challenges?
Well, actually, in a way, I actually see that the problem is actually possibly, strange way, procurement. Actually, that OpenRAN actually opens a lot of opportunities, which actually, whilst the focus had kind of been on how do we replace our effectively create new challenges in terms of network equipment. I think the real opportunities in OpenRAN are really in the area of operational savings and in terms of innovation. And we need to get over the challenge of seeing OpenRAN as just another kind of pseudo network equipment provider, and and making sure that we're seeing these other benefits and understanding that those benefits don't come from just simply replicating the kind of RAN that we have at the moment. The opportunity is in doing more with the openness that OpenRAN provides.
Thank you, Francis. And Volker, from what our other guests have said, are you agreeing what their perceived challenges are with OpenRAN? Have you got some thoughts of your own as to what operators might be faced with here?
Yes, I fully agree what the previous speakers have said, but I think what is the biggest challenge is currently to bring OpenRAN in high capacity areas, so inside the cities, and also integrate all these massive MIMO stuff into the system and find a good solution on the cell side, which is integrating all the stuff which is currently there, and have a kind of full solution for that one, which looks good, which is energy efficient and also providing good service and high capacity.
Well, thanks everyone. Unless there's any more comments, I think we should move on to our second question, and this really concerns how you run an OpenRAN deployment alongside your existing network. So, Tom, how can operators best mitigate these challenges and successfully run fully hybrid networks?
I mean, God, a real lovely open-ended question. Thank you. So many answers to so many challenges. As you look at where we are in the product life cycle, I think for the operators and for BT in particular, we have the best 5G network out there. We're in 160 kind of towns and cities now, and therefore, as we look at ORAN, we're looking at the opportunities outside the macrocellular network in the course of the next few years, so we can prove the technology and prove that hand in hand with our customers. Working on private networks, working on neutral hosts, small cells, those kind of implementations allows us to learn about the technology, allows us to tailor the service to our customers, and to ensure that we're bringing the whole ecosystem up together. It will also allow us to work on our operating model, as you say, where we're working in a hybrid scenario. Do we have customers who are going to need access to a private network, but mobility to the macro network? So it's all those kind of models and test cases we want to work through over the course of the next few years as we bring this new ORAN technology to the fore.
Thanks. And Terje, you mentioned in your first answer there the previous generations of cellular, but network operators are dealing not just with different generations of cellular. You've got fully hybrid networks currently in operation. Add OpenRAN to this. How can they make it all work? Is there a secret to success to successfully mitigate these challenges?
No, I think it's an excellent question, and but I think it's also important to what a couple of the previous speakers mentioned, that we are of course building out coverage and providing services for a purpose. So there is a scenario or a use case we want to support, and of course in some of these use cases it doesn't have to be fully integrated in everything. It's take for example on the fixed wireless access, which could be rather dedicated and targeted. Which doesn't maybe need to support full mobility. Of course, depends on how you want to put it on that product on the market. So there might be use cases where actually we can do 5G in a bit independent of the earlier generations, and that of course will also then help with how to deploy it, and also doesn't probably need to be fully integrated in all aspects. And then of course there are specific use cases, for example, on the enterprise side. Which could be maybe not addressing smartphones, but it could be addressing other devices. So it depends a bit on the use case and how you actually want to deploy. And there are cases here, I think we are seeing today, where we could actually do this and get the benefits back without this kind of fully integrated. Everything won't need to be supported by the common platform.
Okay, thank you. Any of our other guests want to comment on this question about running hybrid networks? Francis?
Yes, I was going to say, I think one of the critical things I think we're in danger of making with OpenRAN is to see it as it's a standard. In our view, it's very much more than that. It's a movement. It's a philosophy of the way you approach things. And a lot of the needs of the hybrid network are really about how you bring in OpenRAN and bring the philosophy that it enables for you. So a lot of it needs to be a lot more thinking about fundamentally it's about software rather than perceiving this as another set of boxes that you're going to run. and to a degree, how you change the operational environment that is actually going to be used for it. So, being honest, there's a lovely law, I think it dates back to the early 70s, called Conway's Law, which says in adopting a new technology, systems tend to replicate the operational environment that they're going into. So in adapting OpenRAN, we're always in danger of actually effectively bring what we had before into the way that we run the OpenRAN. And actually, a lot of it is actually about how do we overcome things. So just very simply, we're very keyed up to a 5 nines environment and a kind of whatever term is a knock view of the world, which is we deal with failure when it happens and we scramble like mad. Rakuten, for example, has taken a very different, which is very much the OpenRAN sort of poster child, is taking a very different view. Availability is 100% because I have a cloud native network, and a whole set of operational changes happen as a result of that. So I'd highlight a lot of this will be about how do I make the operational changes, which actually will impact some of the things I do with my existing network, but also enables me to actually make OpenRAN something more than just simply another RAN technology.
Thanks, Francis. And Terje, did you want to come back in on what Francis was saying there?
Yeah, just to be, maybe I came across a bit one-sided. I fully agree that, of course, we are there to provide the services also, but we are using this, and we see OpenRAN as one example of what we call the open networking, or call it the cloud journey or whatever, which is part of the transformation, not only of the way we are operating network, but also the way we are collaborating with partners. So surely I fully agree with Francis in that sense that this is a trigger, and it's also a different way of work, which we fully have to embrace. So it's not only about boxes and generations of radios, but it's also the way we are running our production means, and which is different. And it's potential to do this quite differently and much more future ready and flexible in that sense. And I think OpenRAN is a key component actually to trigger this and also help us to take these steps going forward.
Yeah. I think when we first talked about OpenRAN, it was looking at opening up the interfaces in part of the architecture, but it's become more than that. As I think maybe it was Francis who said just earlier, it's become more of a movement, more like a philosophy, and it impacts a lot of other areas of a telco's business. If there are no other comments for this question, should we therefore move on to the third question we got in from our audience, which actually is following a similar thread. Volker, maybe I could come to you on this one first. And our audience is asking, how important is it to have OpenRAN systems that can manage previous generations, 2G, 3G, 4G, as well as 5G? Because I guess, we've talked a lot about OpenRAN with 4G, and now we're moving OpenRAN in 5G. But what about some of those preceding networks for those operators who are still running them?
Yeah, I think personally, I think 4G is a must for sure, because there are too many handsets out there, and people are using 4G. So 4G is a must. With 2G, I think there's a possibility to keep the existing 2G system in place until it's kind of outphased, which will be another 5 years. But I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest in 2G a lot more. With 3G, in Europe at least, I see a lot of operators now switching off 3G. So 3G will be gone until O-RAN is coming. So I believe 4G and 5G needs to be, of course, in O-RAN. 2G, I would take the strategy and reuse my existing systems, because the whole architecture of 2G is quite different. You still got this mobility switch, the BSC, and also 2G is a fully different kind of transmission schemes, while 4G and 5G are very similar. So my recommendation would keep the 2G connected together with the O-RAN, maybe on the antenna, and then concentrate on 4G, 5G, while 3G will be switched off soon.
Thanks for that, Volker. Yes, it's a shame about 3G. We used to love 3G so much. Not so much love for it anymore, is there? What about other guests? Any thoughts about looking at 2G and how we can handle our really old legacy systems with OpenRAN?
I think there's an element where we need to recognise 2G is going to be around for a long time, particularly in say sub-Saharan Africa, etc., merely because of actually a device availability. So we're going to have to keep this going. The decision as to whether we migrate 2G functionality from it's all possible to put into software just like anything else. It will be a business case as to does it make sense to move that to software? Does it make it sense to centralize some of the functionality of that over running the two systems in parallel? So it will be fundamentally an economic model. It will be an economic model, but it can be made to work in software, which is what OpenRAN is about.
Thanks. And Tom, would you like to come in on the generational question?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the comments that everybody's just made, which is, yes, ultimately it is a business case. You can do it. I would say where macro cellular deployments are concerned, I think where somebody made the comment around devices, look, yes, and actually my own accountability, I'm charged with the decommissioning of 3G. I think that's going to happen over the course of the next couple of years, and that's fairly consistent across Europe. 2G's been around damn near 30 years. So it is embedded out there, and that's quite a large customer contact strategy to go out to all of those installations, and a hell of a lot of them are machine to machine, not just people with glove box phones. So for that, it's a very long lead time, and if we're serious about O-RAN in the macrocellular network, then I think there will need to be a solution at some point. I just see that that's going to be quite a long lead time to swap that out in a lot of countries, and that's before we even think about the case given, which is inbound roamers from other countries.
Yeah, fascinating. So there's a lot to think about there. We tend to look at 4G and 5G, but I think we've got quite a bit of mileage with OpenRAN and 2G in the years to come. Should we move on to our next question then from our audience? Terje, I'm going to come to you with this one if I can. And that is, OpenRAN has mostly been used so far for 4G deployments, as we've been discussing. What are the key requirements? What are the specific and different requirements for 5G OpenRAN deployments?
Yeah, that's we are currently looking into that. Of course, we are doing 5G for you're launching 5G for a specific purpose on the markets. I think we come from that perspective, and then of course typically we see that there are new spectrum bands. There might be a higher speed, a bit lower latency, which is then also of course driving requirements on the technical systems, which then the OpenRAN platform or solution should be. Even though I refer to it as a box, it's not really a box. It's of course a way of work and the total architecture. So of course, again, from the customer point of view, they should see an improvement and effect and the benefit of also getting moving over to 5G. And surely the OpenRAN solutions need to support that. So it shouldn't be a step down actually in the performance or the customer experience when you move from 4G to 5G. That means that there are getting tougher requirements on for example, how to support higher speeds, how to support lower latency. Surely when you're using TDD spectrums, it's also on the synchronization, which is rather tight also on that respect. So there are quite a few of those stepping up a bit on the technical requirements when you are taking the step from some of the 4G to the 5G deployments, which of course then OpenRAN also and the solution needs to provide and fully needs to support in that respect.
Thank you, Francis. Are you seeing already a list of specific requirements for 5G OpenRAN that are fundamentally different to 4G OpenRAN?
I think we need to look at what the operators are doing. In reality, most 5G deployments are still very much really 4G plus. They're enhancing the mobile broadband capability for consumers, and the network itself is being largely run as it was before, but with maybe new bands, new radio. I think the interesting thing comes when we move to standalone core and aspects of that, because I think that gives that starts to push two things really. One of which is that you're going to start to see a lot more the need for that enabling much more dynamic network slicing. Now, in the early stages, I think what that means is we will probably create what I would term as semi-static network slices for particular use cases, one for IoT, one for ultra reliable low latency communication. But longer term, the whole thing about where you can place things in the core, where you can place various components of the RAN, actually means that you're going to have an ability to be much more dynamic in your orchestration of those components, maybe particularly network slices for particular people. And I think that it's at that point that the whole way in which you are running the RAN, orchestrating components of the RAN with the core, with third-party applications, becomes much more important. So network slicing, I think, will change a lot of that. With the ambition that you want to be dynamic and personalized about it. The other thing I think that ultimately comes with the new bands, for example, is a lot more cell scale. Simply, 5G is fundamentally reliant on a lot of the capacity is reliant on lots of much smaller cells in different locations and the self-configuration of that one, and also the management of the energy consumption of those cells. So again, a lot of the aspects of being able to turn up, turn down aspects of the RAN network, the ability to move parts of the RAN network, maybe things in a high capacity daytime situation are very much at the edge, but you bring them back into the center as the load goes down during the night, for example. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of the changes within 5G and the opportunities in 5G for Open RAN being different.
And Tom, as Francis said, things change a lot when we start talking about standalone 5G.
I was to come back to your question, really. Yes, I think Open RAN for us as a new technology, it is about our roadmap ahead, not replicating what we've already done with 4G. That's there. So agree with the points made. I think very much as we look ahead with standalone, we're looking at how we can integrate that with some of the new technologies and working with new partners and a new ecosystem. And I've mentioned this before, which is around things that are very specific for the customer. You talked there about a static slice. One of the specific customers for the 4G network is the emergency service network. And that's a very critical customer. Yeah, that's blue light services. Is ORAN going to be ready for that kind of availability? Compare that to a private network or for a neutral host solution where you're looking at the unwired factory and low latency services. These are all the kind of standalone slices that have just been talked around. That's what we will need this ORAN technology to adapt and adopt so that we can then bring that to our customers.
Thank you. And Volker, if I could ask you as well, what are you seeing as the key requirements for 5G Open RAN, I guess specifically standalone 5G Open RAN that are different to 4G?
Yeah, I think if we want to have 5G standalone, you need a very important component. So you need low band coverage, wide area coverage, indoor coverage with, for example, 700 megahertz. And then we need to refarm of some of the 1800, 2100 bands towards 5G to give additional capacity. And on top, we need the 3.5 gigahertz massive MIMO bands coming in to give this extra massive capacity to the networks. And this is what you need for a full 5G. So this kind of frequency cake where you have the big wide area coverage plus mid bands plus the high bands, and this all together is giving you then a good network, which is really worth to be different than what we have in nowadays with 4G. And this needs to be fixed first, and then of course you need to have a standalone core to have this and have the features available, the carrier aggregation features between the carriers. So all of this needs to be provided by ORAN. And ORAN could help with that, like providing the systems to make this happen, because we need to roll out 700 in Europe, and we need to roll out 3.5 gigahertz in Europe. I think this is new, and we will need to refarm at least one of the 1800 or 2100 band.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your answers to that question. I think we've got time for one more question from our audience today. And we've been taking a close look at private 5G networks all this week. Terje, can I ask you this one first? Is there a difference between an Open RAN architecture for public networks and an Open RAN architecture that's been designed specifically for private wireless network deployments?
I think so far what we have been looking into is yes. I think so. We are running a couple of pilots with some customers on private networks and also some early commercial deployments. So of course it's a great variation and it's a great span within the customer cases from everything from covering a warehouse to actually supporting real-time and rather low latency for remote controlling cases. For example, on some customer cases. So this is very targeted, and typically when the enterprises and the customer comes on for this kind of opportunities, they are very focused on that we can support, the business critical operations what they have, because you are taking a part in the way they are running their business. So reliability and robustness is also a key component in that respect. So while I think we have been discussing earlier as well, when we talk about mobile broadband and supporting smartphones and so on, it's typically coming from the 4G evolving that with higher speed and lower latency. So what we have seen so far is that the use cases are actually quite different, and that's also why we have defined what we call the two-track approach to 5G, where these two tracks are actually addressing those two different characteristics, coming from the wide area mobile technology evolution, and the other one coming from the more use it for specific purposes, supporting enterprise cases, typically in their Industry 4.0 improvements and so on. And of course, what we see that when we are engaging with industry cases, as I said, there is quite a wide variation on what can be provided, what can actually a site, what should be an antenna, what is physically available where we can install equipment and so forth. And I think in all these cases, ORAN could actually play a great role if it's supporting this mix and match mentality, as we discussed, both from different sources. It could be specialized on certain components and combining both software and hardware from the different providers in that sense.
Thank you, Terje. And Francis, what are your observations in this area?
I think we need to recognize that, accepting the technology, they are completely different business problems, and that's really the thing which will make CSPs either a success at the private networks or not a success as private networks. Is understanding the business model. We're used to, as operators, we're used to really solving a major scale problem at a national scale. Fundamentally, for a private network is an enterprise network. 5G is another form of access technology for that enterprise network. The interest of a private enterprise is not in the technology of how you deliver it, but it's the application that it can support. So there are some very different business problems that we're solving, and certainly in terms of the operators getting value in this area, it's the ability to be able to address what the enterprise needs, rather than saying, I know how to run a macro national network. And similarly for the equipment providers, it's here's a problem that actually looks pretty much like Wi-Fi today, better capabilities, but actually that's fundamentally what I'm actually trying to solve. So I think a lot of it will be about, we've got to understand, and I think the earlier comment, we've got to understand private networks are about specialization rather than general. They're networks which are about specialization of use case, not about generalization of use cases. But if we can address those issues, there's a successful play for the traditional mobile equipment providers and the CSPs in terms of managing or better delivering those solutions.
Thank you, Francis. And Volker, different business problems, different business models. Does that mean we have to go about, as operators, we have to go about designing, architecting our OpenRAN differently for the different use case?
I think the majority of the campus networks, or however you want to call them, they will come in 3.5 gigahertz. I don't believe they will be in this wide area frequency. So we need reliable, cheap 3.5 gigahertz equipment. The other component I see, we need scalable core networks, because typically they will have very small core networks, and you cannot deploy €1 million for a core network in a factory or something like this. So it needs to be very scalable. It needs to go on custom on the shelf hardware, and the other thing the industry still needs to work on kind of UEs. So basically, I guess the industry will not use normal handsets. So they will use sensors, and they have to have built-in 5G capability, and this all together is then giving the ecosystem. And I'm sure this will take a little bit until the Siemens and Bosch of this world have equipped their machinery with 5G modems or UEs.
Yeah, it's very interesting you bring that one up about the different devices required for the different use cases. I think we tend to overlook that at the moment. But Tom, I'm going to come to you for final comments. You spoke earlier about the blue light services, for example. Do you therefore see the need for OpenRAN to be architected differently depending on the use case?
I don't think I see the need for it to be architected differently. I think the work that we're all doing through standards is the right work. And I think, we've talked across the course of this conversation around moving to that software developed kind of open API world. That is still where we need to go. I absolutely endorse the points that Volker made around the ecosystem as we start to look at this in partnership with our customers. It is around the appropriate services they're going to want. What do they actually want to sign up to? What's the availability? You said there the 100% availability, which, to be frank, in a radio network scenario is a very tall ask. But that is why we move down these architectural routes, because they are more likely to achieve those levels of availability. So I don't think it's a change in architecture. I think nonetheless it is an onus on the operators to work in partnership with the entire ecosystem to move all of it together, not just the OpenRAN products and services, as was mentioned, the UEs, working with the customer on ensuring they're asking and getting the right availability for the right service.
Well, thank you, Tom. And with that, we'll have to draw our discussion to a close. Thank you all very much indeed for participating and sharing your views and expertise on this subject. Now, if you're watching this on day 3 of our DSP Leaders Summit on 5G Evolution, then don't forget to send us any questions you have, and we'll try and answer them in our live after-show program, and that's later today. And do take part in our online poll. You can find it below this video player window next to the Q&A app. All of this week's programs are available to view online on demand here at TelecomTV. We'll be back later with a final after show of 5G Evolution. Until then, thanks for watching and goodbye.